We just needed a break. That's all. A weekend away from work, stress, and the endless cycle of deadlines and responsibilities. Lisa and I had been running on fumes for months. Early mornings, late nights, and barely enough time to talk, let alone enjoy life. That's why the cabin seemed perfect. A 3-day retreat deep in the woods, far from the city, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just us, nature, and the silence we had both been craving. The listing online had described it as secluded, peaceful, and surrounded by beautiful wilderness. It wasn't fancy, just a small wooden structure with a porch, a fireplace, and the promise of tranquility. It was exactly what we wanted, or so we thought. Arrival. We arrived in the late afternoon, the road narrowing into a dirt path as we got deeper into the forest. Tall trees lined both sides, their bare branches twisting overhead like skeletal fingers. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp leaves and pine. Lisa was excited. I could see it in the way her eyes lit up as we pulled into the clearing. "This is perfect," she said, already reaching for her camera bag. She had recently picked up photography as a hobby, and this trip was just as much about capturing nature as it was about unwinding. As soon as we stepped out, she started snapping pictures of the towering trees, the way the golden sunlight filtered through the branches, the old wooden porch that creaked under our weight. The cabin itself was modest but cozy, a single-story structure with a slanted roof, a small kitchen, and a living area with a stone fireplace. There was one bedroom, a bathroom, and a storage closet near the back. The furniture was rustic, wooden chairs, a couch that had definitely seen better days, and a small dining table near the window. We found the key in the lockbox, just as the owner had instructed in his email. Everything inside was as expected, clean, functional, and untouched, as if no one had stayed here in a long time. Lisa set up her camera on a tripod near the window, facing the forest. "I want to capture the wildlife at night," she said. "Maybe we'll get lucky and see some deer or a fox." I nodded, though I wasn't sure how much luck we'd have. The forest felt still, almost too still. The first uneasy feeling. The first evening was uneventful. We cooked dinner, drank some wine, and sat on the porch, listening to the distant hoot of an owl. At one point, Lisa squinted at the tree line. "Did you see that?" I followed her gaze, but saw nothing. "What?" She hesitated. "I thought I saw something move between the trees." I chuckled. "Probably just your imagination. Or a deer." She nodded, but she kept glancing back as if expecting to see something again. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The silence outside was oppressive. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was heavy, unnatural. But I pushed the thoughts aside. I was overthinking it, or so I thought. Lisa was up early, eager to check the footage from her camera. I found her sitting at the dining table, scrolling through clips on her laptop. "Hey," she called, her voice uncertain. "Come look at this." I walked over, still groggy. She hit play. At first it was nothing, just the dark forest, the occasional rustling of leaves. But then, movement. A shadowy figure darted between the trees, barely visible. It was fast, almost too fast. "What the hell?" I muttered. Lisa rewound and slowed it down. Frame by frame, we watched as something stepped out from behind a tree. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human either. It was tall, unnaturally tall, with limbs that seemed too long for its frame. It stood motionless, half shrouded in the darkness. Then, in an instant, it was gone. Lisa swallowed hard. That's not normal. I tried to reason with it. Maybe it's a trick of the light, a glitch in the camera. But I didn't believe my own words. The day passed uneventfully, but the tension lingered. The forest felt different now. The trees seemed darker, the shadows longer. At dusk, Lisa set up the camera again, this time closer to the porch, angled toward the clearing. "If anything's out there," she said, "we'll catch it on camera." Neither of us slept well. In the morning, Lisa checked the footage. She didn't speak. I watched over her shoulder. At first, nothing. Just the empty clearing. Then, movement. Something stepped into view. It was the same thing from the night before. Only now, it was closer. We watched in horror as the figure crept toward the cabin. It moved unnaturally, limbs jerking as if they didn't belong to it. It stopped just at the edge of the porch. Then, slowly, it looked up, right into the camera. Lisa let out a small, choked gasp. The thing just stood there, staring. Then, its head snapped toward the cabin window. The same window we were sitting beside. The same window where Lisa's camera had been set up. A cold wave of dread washed over me. Lisa scrambled away from the laptop. "We need to go, now." I didn't argue. We grabbed our phones, the car keys, nothing else. We didn't pack, didn't look back. The drive back was silent. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us wanted to speak. We stopped at a gas station miles away. Only then did Lisa whisper, "We left the laptop behind." I didn't care. I don't ever want to see that footage again. I don't want to know what happened after the video cut off. All I know is, nothing happened to us on that day. And for that, I thank God.
There are houses that people avoid, and there are houses that everyone forgets. The old mansion on Dread Hollow Lane fell into the latter category, a looming, ivy-covered relic at the edge of a forgotten road. I was never one for ghost stories, but curiosity has a way of bending logic, and my curiosity about that house was insatiable. It was late October when I decided to visit. The air was damp, and the sky hung low with the promise of rain. I had passed the house countless times on my evening runs, its broken windows staring like vacant eyes. There was no sign of life, no sound of birds or insects around it, just the stillness that made your skin prickle. I told myself it would be quick, just a peek inside. I parked my car at the end of the lane, under the shadow of a withered oak tree, and walked the rest of the way. The house loomed taller as I approached, its dark, rotting facade almost blending into the surrounding trees. The front door was ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. I stepped inside, and the air was colder than it should have been, as if the house had been holding its breath. Dust coated every surface, and the smell of mildew hung heavy. The floorboards groaned under my weight, and I half expected them to give way, plunging me into darkness. The first room I entered was the parlor. Faded wallpaper peeled away to reveal stained plaster, and a broken chandelier hung lopsided from the ceiling. A piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed and warped. But it was the paintings that caught my attention. They were portraits, but not like any I'd seen before. The faces were twisted, their features exaggerated to grotesque proportions. Some stared directly at me, their painted eyes glistening as though wet. Others had their heads turned, as if listening to something unseen. I felt watched. The sensation was faint at first, like the tickle of a spider's web across my skin. But it grew stronger, an oppressive weight pressing against my chest. I turned quickly, but there was nothing behind me, just the empty doorway leading to a dim hall. I should have left then, but something kept me there, a pull I couldn't explain. I ventured deeper into the house, each step feeling heavier, each breath harder to draw. The walls seemed closer now, the air thicker, and the silence more profound. The kitchen was next. It looked like it had been abandoned mid-meal. Plates sat on the table, their contents long since turned to mold. The stove was rusted, and the faucet dripped into a basin crusted with grime. On the counter was a knife, its blade pristine, gleaming despite the decay around it. That's when I heard the first sound, a faint scraping, like nails dragging across wood. It came from above. I froze, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. The sound grew louder, more deliberate, as if someone or something was moving toward the staircase. The logical part of me screamed to leave, to run out the way I came and never look back. But the pull was stronger, dragging me toward the base of the stairs. The staircase spiraled upward into darkness, each step narrower than the last. I gripped the banister, my palms slick with sweat, and began to climb. The scraping grew louder, now accompanied by a soft, irregular tapping. The second floor was worse. The air was colder, the shadows deeper. Doors lined the hallway, most of them closed, but one stood ajar. Light spilled out, flickering like candlelight. I approached cautiously, each step feeling like it stretched time. My breathing was shallow, my throat dry. When I reached the door, I peered inside. It was a child's room, or it had been once. A crib sat in the corner, its mattress stained and sagging. A mobile hung above it, its figures twisted and broken. On the floor was a rocking horse, its painted eyes cracked but still somehow expressive. And in the center of the room, facing the crib, was a chair. A figure sat in it, its back to me, unmoving. I don't know why I didn't run then. My legs felt rooted to the spot, my body frozen in place. The figure was wrapped in a tattered shawl, its head tilted downward as if in mourning. The scraping started again, louder now, closer. It was coming from the hallway behind me. I turned, and for the first time I saw it. It was humanoid, but only barely. Its limbs were too long, its fingers ending in jagged claws. Its face was featureless, smooth like polished stone, save for a single vertical slit where its mouth should have been. The thing tilted its head as if studying me. Then it opened its mouth. The sound that came out wasn't a scream or a growl. It was a chorus of voices, overlapping and distorted, each one filled with rage and anguish. I stumbled back into the room, slamming the door shut. The figure in the chair was gone. The walls began to shake, the sound of splintering wood filling the air. The door bulged inward as if something massive was trying to force its way through. The thing outside the door howled, the sound reverberating through my skull. Splinters flew as the door began to give. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I climbed through the window, dropping 2 stories into the overgrown yard below. Pain shot through my ankle, but adrenaline kept me moving. I ran blindly, the tall grass tearing at my legs, the trees closing in around me. Behind me, the house groaned, its walls seeming to collapse inward, as if being consumed by itself. When I reached my car, I didn't look back. The engine roared to life, and I sped down the lane, the headlights cutting through the fog. To this day, I don't know what I saw in that house, but I know one thing. I wasn't supposed to leave. Something in there wanted me, and it wasn't ready to let me go. I've since heard stories about others who ventured into that house. None of them came back, and I'll never go back. Not even to prove to myself that it was real. Some places are better left forgotten, their secrets buried in the shadows where they belong. Story 2. There's something haunting about train stations at night. The emptiness, the faint echoes, the way the shadows stretch and linger. I've never been able to shake the unease they give me, and after what happened at Ashcroft Station, I don't think I ever will. Ashcroft Station is a small, forgotten stop in rural Pennsylvania, though it hasn't been in use for decades. I came across it while researching abandoned railways for a photography project. The photos I found online showed a crumbling platform, a graffiti-covered ticket booth, and rusted tracks disappearing into the overgrowth. It was perfect, isolated and atmospheric, exactly the kind of place I love to explore. The drive out was uneventful, though the roads became narrower and rougher the closer I got. By the time I reached the station, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I parked my car at the edge of the overgrown lot and grabbed my camera, eager to start shooting before the light was completely gone. The station looked even more decrepit in person. The roof of the main building had partially collapsed, and the windows were shattered, leaving jagged shards of glass and rotting frames. The platform was cracked and uneven, weeds sprouting through the gaps. A single street lamp near the entrance flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows. I started with the exterior, snapping photos of the station against the darkening sky. The air was still, the only sound the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. As I moved closer to the tracks, I noticed something odd. There were no signs of wildlife. No birds, no insects, nothing. The silence was oppressive, a heavy weight that settled over the area. I told myself it was just my imagination and stepped onto the platform. That's when I saw the schedule board. It was an old wooden thing, its surface faded and peeling, but the times and destinations were clear, as though freshly written. The next train was listed as arriving at 8:37 p.m. I checked my phone. It was 8:20. The rational part of me knew this was impossible. The station had been abandoned for decades, and the tracks were so rusted they couldn't possibly support a train. But the thought of a train arriving in this desolate place sent a chill down my spine. I decided to wait. Maybe someone had put the sign there as a joke, or maybe I'd misread the board. Either way, I couldn't leave without knowing. The minutes ticked by slowly. The shadows grew longer, and the flickering street lamp cast an eerie glow over the platform. I tried to focus on taking photos, but my hands shook, and the unease in my chest grew heavier. At 8:30, I heard it, a faint rumble in the distance. I turned toward the tracks, my heart pounding. The sound grew louder, accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of wheels on steel. A bright light appeared in the distance, cutting through the darkness. A train. It was impossible, but there it was. A massive black locomotive barreling toward the station. Its headlights pierced the gloom, illuminating the platform in harsh, flickering light. The train screeched to a halt, the sound deafening in the silence. The engine hissed and groaned as though alive, its steel surface gleaming despite its age. The windows of the passenger cars were dark, their interiors hidden. I stood frozen, my camera hanging limp at my side. The air around the train felt heavy, electric, as if charged with static. Then the doors slid open. The inside of the train was bathed in an unnatural glow, a sickly green light that seemed to pulse faintly. Shapes moved within, indistinct but unmistakably human. They didn't step off the train. Instead, they stood just inside the doors, watching. I couldn't see their faces, only the faint outlines of their forms. But I felt their eyes on me. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them. A voice crackled over an unseen speaker, low and distorted. "All aboard!" The words sent a jolt of fear through me. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. The figures in the train began to move, stepping closer to the doors, their forms becoming more distinct. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, as though their limbs were bending in ways they shouldn't. I took a step back, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The air around me grew colder, the electric charge intensifying. The voice crackled again, more insistent this time. "All aboard!" I stumbled back further, my foot catching on the edge of the platform. I fell hard, the impact jolting me back to my senses. Without thinking, I scrambled to my feet and ran, the sound of my boots pounding against the cracked pavement. Behind me, the train let out a deafening whistle. I didn't dare look back. I reached my car and threw myself inside, slamming the door shut. My hands fumbled with the keys, the trembling making it almost impossible to start the engine. Finally, the car roared to life. I peeled out of the lot, the tires skidding on the gravel. As I sped down the road, I caught a glimpse of the station in my rearview mirror. The train was gone. The platform was empty, the flickering street lamp casting its dim glow over the desolate scene. It was as if nothing had happened. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away, the station far behind me. I've since tried to find more information about Ashcroft Station, but there's almost nothing. A few mentions in old railway records, some blurry photos online, but nothing about a train still running through it. Sometimes late at night, I think I hear the faint rumble of wheels on steel, the whistle of a train in the distance. I'll never go back to that station.
Valentine's Day never meant much to me. No romantic plans, no candlelit dinners. Just another cold February night spent alone in my one-bedroom apartment. But last year, something changed. Last year, I got a letter. It was waiting for me when I got home. Slipped under my door, like an invitation to something I never asked for. There was no stamp, no return address. Just an envelope the color of dried blood, resting on my doormat like it had been placed there with careful hands. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling a strange pressure in my chest. I don't get mail. Not like this. Slowly, I picked it up. The paper was thick, almost velvety. My name was written in delicate black ink, but I didn't recognize the handwriting. I swallowed and turned it over. The seal was broken. Someone had opened this before. Inside, a single folded note. I hesitated before unfolding it, as if part of me already knew that whatever was written inside was not meant for me. The words were short, simple, but they sent ice sliding down my spine. Meet me at our spot. Midnight. Don't be late. Our spot. I don't have an our spot with anyone. I don't date. Hell, I barely even go out. At first I thought it was a joke. Some kind of mix-up. But as I stood there, staring at the looping black ink, something strange happened. I felt watched. The air in my apartment shifted, like the pressure had changed, like someone had stepped inside without a sound. I turned sharply, scanning the dimly lit space. Nothing. Still, the feeling didn't go away. I should have thrown the letter away, but I didn't. Instead, I placed it on the kitchen counter, its presence nagging at me for the rest of the evening. I kept glancing at it, half expecting the words to change when I wasn't looking. By the time the clock neared midnight, I found myself checking the lock on my door, twice, just in case. And then, the breathing started. It started softly. So soft, I thought it was my own breath at first. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, pretending to scroll through social media. But I wasn't reading anything. I was listening. There it was again. A slow, measured inhalation. Then, an exhalation. I held my breath, waiting. It wasn't me. I glanced toward the kitchen. The red envelope still sat there, stark against the cold marble. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest, like something had shifted in the room. And then I felt it. Not a touch, not a sound, but a presence. It was behind me. I don't know how I knew. I just did. A weight, heavy and suffocating, right at my back. Close. Closer than anyone had ever been to me before. I clenched my jaw, every muscle in my body locking into place. I wanted to turn. I needed to. But something deep in my gut screamed at me. Don't look! The breathing continued. A rhythm I didn't recognize. Slow. Deep. Unnatural. The hair on my arms rose. A sudden pressure pushed against the couch, as if someone unseen had leaned in. The air against my neck grew warm. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bolt for the door, but I couldn't move. And then, just when I thought I might break, a whisper, right against my ear. You came. I ran. I don't remember standing. I don't remember grabbing my coat or keys. I just remember my feet pounding against the floor as I sprinted for the door, yanking it open so hard it slammed against the wall. I didn't stop to lock it. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran. The cold night air hit me like a slap, stinging my skin. I ran down the dimly lit hallway of my apartment building, my heart jackhammering against my ribs. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. I didn't wait for the elevator. I barreled down the stairwell, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The old metal steps groaned beneath my weight, each footfall echoing in the silence. I burst out onto the street, the city swallowing me whole. The sidewalks were nearly empty. Just a few late-night wanderers, wrapped in scarves and lost in their own worlds. Streetlights flickered above, their glow hazy in the mist curling along the pavement. I stopped running, my hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. My lungs burned. My skin felt clammy, my body drenched in cold sweat. And yet, I still felt it. That presence. I straightened slowly, my eyes darting around the street. I was being watched. The letters of words echoed in my mind. Meet me at our spot. I didn't have an our spot, but if I did, Would I be there already? My breath hitched. I needed to keep moving. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not yet. The city stretched before me. Streets empty. Buildings towering overhead like silent watchers. And somewhere, in the shadows, something was waiting. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes. Hours. It didn't matter. The streets blurred together, their neon signs and dim alleyways melting into an endless maze of night. At some point, I found myself at the entrance to the subway. The stairs gaped before me, descending into darkness. A train was coming. I could hear it. A low, distant rumble. I hesitated. Going underground felt wrong, like I'd be trapping myself. But the cold gnawed at my bones, and I needed to be anywhere but here. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The station was nearly deserted. A homeless man sat slumped against the far wall, wrapped in layers of tattered fabric. A woman in a red coat stood near the edge of the platform, staring down the tunnel. And then there was me. I moved toward the tracks, my heart still hammering. The waiting silence stretched thin around me. And then, the breathing started again, right behind me. I went rigid. Not here, not in public, not in the middle of the city. But the air shifted, and I knew. It had followed me. A slow inhale, a slow exhale, close enough that I could feel it against the back of my neck. And then, that whisper again. You came. The train's headlights burst into view, illuminating the platform in harsh white light. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Not onto the train. Not forward. I ran up the stairs, back into the cold city night. Because I knew I could never trap myself underground with whatever was waiting for me. By the time I reached my apartment, dawn was creeping over the skyline. The exhaustion settled in my bones, like lead. But I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Instead, I stood across the street, staring up at my window. The curtains were closed. Everything looked normal, but I knew better. I took out my phone with shaking fingers. The screen lit up, displaying missed calls and messages from people I didn't care about right now. And then, a new message. No sender, no number, just a single line of text. You came. I'll see you again soon. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the pavement. I turned and ran from that place, and till now I never gone back to that street. I don't know whatever I felt that day was genuine or any kind of illusion. Or maybe I don't want to know.
There's a town, a place that shouldn't exist, yet it does. A town so deeply buried in the folds of reality that it escapes notice. Not on any map, no stories about it, and no one who goes there ever truly comes back. Gloomvale. It's more than a name. It's a memory. A scar etched into my mind so deeply I can never forget. Some nights I dream of its streets, its shadows, and its secrets. And when I wake, I can still hear the whispers of that cursed place calling me back. It all began one chilly October evening in the fall of 1994. I had been driving for hours, lost on a stretch of road that felt like it had no end. My car's gas gauge was edging toward empty. My GPS had long since stopped working, and the trees lining the highway seemed to press closer with every mile. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go any further, I saw it. A narrow dirt path branching off the main road, hidden beneath the thick shadows of overhanging branches. I should have kept driving. Every instinct in me screamed to stay on the highway, but there's a strange power in curiosity, isn't there? I turned onto the path. The dirt road was rough, overgrown with weeds and lined with trees that seemed ancient, their twisted branches arching overhead like skeletal hands. The further I drove, the darker it became, as though the sun had vanished entirely. My headlights barely cut through the gloom, and the air outside felt thick, oppressive, almost alive. The wind had stopped, the trees no longer swayed, and even the sound of my car's engine seemed muffled, like the world was holding its breath. And then I saw it. A town. It appeared out of nowhere, as if it had materialized from the darkness itself. Rows of crumbling houses lined cracked streets, their windows shattered and empty, like hollow eyes staring back at me. The air smelled of mildew and decay, and an unnatural stillness hung over the place. At the town's entrance stood a rusted metal sign, barely visible beneath a tangle of vines. I got out of the car to get a better look. Scraping away the dirt and rust, I revealed the words etched into its surface. "Welcome to Gloomvale." I should have left, turned around, driven back, and never looked back. But instead, I stepped forward. The streets of Gloomvale were empty, but not abandoned. No, the place felt alive in its own twisted way. Houses leaned against each other as if whispering secrets, their doors slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of rotting furniture and forgotten relics of a bygone era. There were toys scattered in the yards, rusted bicycles, dolls with missing limbs, and a ball that looked as if it had been left mid-play. It was as though the town's inhabitants had vanished in an instant, leaving everything behind. I walked aimlessly, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud against the silence. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became, like the town itself was pressing down on me. And then I saw it, the diner. Its neon sign flickered weakly, casting a sickly green glow. The words "Eats" buzzed faintly, and for a moment, I thought I could hear voices inside. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the bell above jingling faintly. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of grease, mildew, and something else. Something metallic, like blood. The booths were empty, their vinyl seats cracked and covered in dust. The counter was lined with half-filled coffee cups, steam still rising from their surfaces as if they'd been poured moments ago. Plates of food sat untouched, the pancakes now gray and shriveled. And then I saw her. She was sitting in the far corner, her back to me. Long dark hair hung down her back, and her shoulders shook slightly, as though she was crying. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't move. I stepped closer. "Are you all right?" Still no response. I reached out a hand, intending to tap her shoulder, but before I could, she turned. Her face, it wasn't human. Her eyes were black voids, endless and hollow. Her mouth stretched impossibly wide, her lips cracked and bleeding. She stared at me with a grotesque grin, her teeth jagged and yellowed. "Why did you come here?" she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. I stumbled back, my heart racing, but when I blinked, she was gone. I ran out of the diner, the door slamming shut behind me. The streets were darker now, the shadows deeper and more alive. I felt them moving, shifting just out of sight. My car was gone. I stood there, frozen, as the reality of my situation sank in. I was alone, stranded in a place that shouldn't exist. That's when I heard it, a low, haunting melody, carried on the still air. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, more insistent, drawing me toward the center of town. The music led me to a park. In the center stood a carousel, its paint faded and chipped. The lights flickered weakly, and the haunting tune came from its speakers, warping and distorting with each note. Around the carousel stood figures. At first I thought they were statues, pale, still, and featureless. But then one moved. Its head twisted unnaturally, turning toward me. Panic gripped me as its blank face seemed to stare straight into my soul. Before I could react, the other figures began to move too, their limbs jerking like broken marionettes controlled by invisible strings. I didn't wait. I ran. They followed silently, their presence closing in like shadows with weight. I turned down one street, then another, but no matter where I went, every path led me back to the park. The figures multiplied, appearing on every street corner, in every alleyway, their eyeless faces locked on me. I couldn't escape them. Finally, I spotted a church at the edge of town, its doors slightly ajar. A faint light flickered inside. Without thinking, I bolted toward it, slipping through the doors and slamming them shut behind me. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with the smell of wax and decay. The faint light came from candles on the altar, their flames flickering and casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. My eyes were drawn to a book resting on the altar. It was old, its pages yellowed and curling at the edges. Strange symbols filled its margins, and the words seemed to shift and twist as I stared at them. The book told the story of Gloomvale, a town that didn't exist on any map, a town born from darkness, feeding on the lost and the curious. A trap. I froze as realization hit me. The book wasn't just telling me about Gloomvale. It was telling my story. A creak behind me shattered my thoughts. The church doors were opening. I turned slowly, dread clawing up my spine. There she was. The woman from the diner stood in the doorway, her smile wider than humanly possible. Behind her, the figures from the park filed in, their blank faces turned toward me. "Welcome home," she whispered. The candles flickered out, plunging the church into darkness. My breath hitched as their presence filled the room. The figures' jerky movements became faster, their limbs twisting in unnatural angles. The woman raised a hand and pointed at me. It wasn't a command. It was a sentence. I ran. The sound of their footsteps was impossibly loud, echoing through the darkness. Her laughter followed me, guttural and mocking, reverberating from every corner of the church. I stumbled toward the back, desperate for an escape. My flashlight beam caught a door partially hidden behind a curtain. I threw it open and ran into the night. But the town had changed. The streets were warped, the buildings towering and distorted, their windows glowing with a sickly green light. Shadows darted within them, their shapes grotesque and wrong. I kept running, her voice taunting me from the fog. "Why run?" she cooed. "You're already ours." My lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. But then through the fog, I saw it. My car. It was parked exactly where I'd left it, its headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. Relief surged through me, but it was short-lived. The shadows around the car seemed thicker, pulsing like a living thing. I sprinted, the laughter growing louder behind me. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. For a moment, there was silence. My hands trembled as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. And then I saw her. She was outside the window, her face pressed against the glass. Her grin stretched impossibly wide, splitting her face in two. Her hollow eyes stared into mine, and her spindly fingers tapped on the glass. "Leaving so soon?" she whispered, her voice muffled but chillingly clear. I screamed and floored the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, her face disappearing as I sped down the road. But the town wasn't done with me. The road twisted unnaturally, the buildings warping and writhing as if alive. Shadows darted in and out of my headlights, their forms impossibly tall and thin. Their hands slapped against the windows, leaving streaks of something dark and viscous. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the road cleared. The warped buildings were gone, the shadows receded, and the oppressive darkness lifted. The first light of dawn painted the horizon, soft and warm. Relief washed over me as I drove, the nightmare finally seeming to fade. But the feeling was fragile, fleeting. Something still felt wrong. The road ahead blurred, twisting unnaturally in my vision. My head spun, my chest tightened, and I could barely grip the wheel. I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her face again, but there was nothing, just the empty road stretching endlessly behind me. Suddenly, a figure darted across the road. I swerved, the headlights catching the rough bark of a tree just before impact. The crash was brutal. Metal crumpled, glass shattered, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was on the side of a quiet highway. A handful of concerned faces surrounded me, their voices muffled and distant. "Are you all right?" a man asked, knocking gently on the car window. I stumbled out, disoriented, my legs shaky. The morning sun was blindingly bright, its warmth foreign and surreal against my skin. "What happened?" another voice asked. "You veered off the road. Are you hurt?" I muttered something incoherent, my mind too clouded to process their words. The ordinary highway, the mundane morning, it all felt wrong. I reassured them I was fine, and they eventually left. I sat by the side of the road for what felt like hours, staring at the stretch of asphalt ahead, trying to make sense of it. Had I escaped? Or was this another trick, another cruel illusion. Sometimes I wonder if I ever left, or if I'm still there, driving in circles, trapped in its grasp. If you ever see a road that shouldn't be there, a town that appears on no map, turn back, and don't stop driving. Because if you don't, you might find yourself like me, lost, forgotten. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll hear her laughter too.